You ever have one of those days where you walk into work and instantly get that sinking feeling? Like something's off in the air, but you can't quite put your finger on it? Yeah, today was exactly that for me. I work in this old archive building downtown, kind of a dusty, quiet place where most people don't bother going unless they're researching some obscure piece of history or trying to find records from the last century. Not exactly a buzzing hotspot, if you catch my drift. So I get to the office around 6 p.m. because, yeah, I'm one of those night owls who prefers working late when nobody else is around. The archive closes at 7, but sometimes we have to stay late to finish cataloging or digitizing old documents. Today I was the only one supposed to be there, which is pretty normal for a Thursday shift. Except when I pushed open the heavy, creaky front door, I was surprised to see someone already inside. He was sitting at one of the long wooden tables near the center of the room, bent over a stack of papers, flipping through them like he was hunting for something. I recognized him immediately. Luke, the new intern who started a few weeks ago. The guy with that easy smile and this kind of magnetic way of just making everyone feel at ease, even in a place as boring as this archive. We'd exchanged a few words before, mostly casual hellos, but nothing that would have me thinking twice about him. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual, but my voice probably carried more surprise than I wanted. "I didn't figure you'd be here this late." He looked up, his eyes catching the dim overhead light, and smiled that half grin that made my chest do this weird little flip. "Yeah, I like working when it's quiet. Feels different, you know?" I shrugged, walking over with my bag. "I get that. Quiet's good for focus." Then I noticed him glance nervously toward the door and suddenly shift in his seat. "Everything okay?" He hesitated, and then, without warning, he stood up and locked the door behind me. Just like that. Click. That small sound echoed louder than I expected in the silent archive. "Better now," he said, a little breathless. I blinked. "Wait, what? Why'd you lock the door?" Luke just looked at me, this flicker of something unreadable in his eyes. "Because we're the only ones here." And I didn't want anyone else to interrupt. That was unexpected. But honestly, the way he said it, like there was more to it than just protecting us from interruptions, made my heart beat faster. The archive suddenly felt smaller, more intimate, even though I was usually fine with being alone here. "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "So now what?" We locked in. Luke stepped closer, and I caught a whiff of his cologne mixed with that faint scent of old paper that always hangs around here. "I guess we are," he said, and the corners of his mouth tugged up in that same half smile. And just like that, the night shifted. From a routine work evening to something charged, like we were about to cross some invisible line neither of us had talked about. I wasn't sure what was going to happen next, but my gut told me I wanted to find out. So yeah, that's how it started. Just me, Luke, and a locked door in the middle of the archive. And honestly, I had no idea where that night was going to take us. I watched him for a second, trying to read whatever was behind those eyes. Luke wasn't exactly the type to be mysterious on purpose. He was usually easygoing, the kind of guy who cracks a joke to ease the tension. But now, locking that door like he just did, it felt deliberate, like he was inviting me into some private moment. My mind raced through a bunch of possibilities. Was he lonely? Nervous? Just bored of the dull archive routine? "Are you serious about the no interruptions thing?" I asked, breaking the silence. "Because, honestly, I'm kind of trapped now." He laughed softly, and it was the kind of laugh that made me want to hear more. "Yeah, I'm serious. But don't worry. I'm not going to keep you hostage." Then he looked around, eyes flicking over the shelves and stacks of old records like he was trying to find the right words. "I just wanted some time with you, without distractions." That caught me off guard. Me? Him? I didn't even know if he really liked me, or if I was just imagining it. We'd never gone beyond casual small talk, and now here he was, locking the door, basically confessing he wanted to be alone with me. I felt my cheeks heat up a little, and I wasn't sure if it was from nerves or something else. "Well, I'm glad you wanted to hang out," I said, trying to sound casual but probably coming off as awkward. It's not every day I get locked in with the most charming intern in the archive. Luke grinned and shrugged, like he wasn't fazed by the compliment, but secretly enjoyed it. Then he pulled out a chair and motioned for me to sit. "Come on, don't stand there like you're about to bolt," I laughed, finally relaxing enough to take the seat. The dim light above us cast long shadows over the stacks of dusty files and yellowed papers. It was quiet, except for the soft scratch of pages turning and the faint hum of the building settling. There was something oddly comforting about it. "So," I said, leaning back, "what made you pick tonight to play the mysterious locked door card?" He shrugged again, but this time there was a flicker of vulnerability in his eyes. "Honestly, I've been wanting to talk to you, properly, not just in passing. You always seem different from the others here. Like you don't really belong in this place." That hit me harder than I expected. Luke was right. The archive wasn't exactly my dream job. I worked here mostly because it paid the bills, and I liked the quiet. But I'd always felt a little out of place, like I was just waiting for something else to come along. "What do you mean?" I asked, curious despite myself. He looked down at his hands, fiddling with the edge of a paper. "I don't know. You have this kind of calm about you. But also, like, there's something burning underneath, like you want more than what you have, and I get that. I feel it too." For a moment, all that was in the room was the sound of our breathing and the faint rustle of papers. Then Luke looked up again, eyes steady and warm. "I guess I just wanted to know if you'd want to maybe get out of here sometime. You know, outside of work." I felt a jolt go through me. This wasn't just about the archive anymore. This was real and terrifying, but more than that, it was exciting. "Yeah," I said, voice a little shaky but honest. "I'd like that." Luke's smile widened, and suddenly the room didn't feel so dusty or claustrophobic. It felt like the start of something new. We kept talking after that, about everything and nothing, the kind of conversations you have when the world's been reduced to just two people in a locked room. He told me about his dreams, about why he'd taken the intern position despite it being so far from what he thought he'd be doing. I shared some of my own stories, things I didn't usually say out loud. At one point, he reached across the table and brushed a stray hair from my forehead. It was a small gesture, but it sent a shiver down my spine. I caught his hand and held it for a second longer than necessary. Out of nowhere, the lights flickered. The building's old wiring was probably acting up, but it broke the moment and pulled us both back to the present. "Looks like we're really locked in," I joked, trying to lighten the mood. Luke laughed and shook his head. "Maybe that's a good thing." We sat there for a few more minutes, just looking at each other, the kind of silence that feels full instead of empty. I realized that locking that door wasn't just about keeping out interruptions. It was about creating a space for something rare, something real. Eventually, I heard a faint noise from outside, someone checking the locks or maybe the security guard doing his rounds. Luke's smile faltered just a bit. "We should probably get back to work," I said, reluctantly standing up. "Yeah," he agreed, but neither of us moved toward the door. Before I could say anything else, Luke stepped closer and whispered, "Let's not make this just a one-time thing, okay?" I nodded, heart pounding in a way I hadn't expected when I clocked in tonight. "Definitely." And as he unlocked the door and we stepped out into the hallway, I knew that the archive and that locked door was where everything changed for us. We stepped out into the hallway, the cold fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, and for a moment the world outside that little locked room felt loud and harsh. I caught Luke's eye as he fumbled with the keys, unlocking the door with a careful click. The sound felt like a punctuation mark, closing that private moment, but also opening something else between us. "Thanks for staying late," I said, trying to keep my voice steady, though I was still riding the weird adrenaline high from the locked door thing. He shrugged, but there was a genuine smile tugging at his lips. "I wanted to. I don't usually get to talk to you like that." I nodded, suddenly wishing the archive's closing time was way later, or better yet, that we could just stay locked in forever. "Yeah, me too." We gathered our things in a quiet shuffle, the silence between us softer now, like we didn't need to fill every second with words. Luke glanced down the long corridor, then back at me, like he was about to say something, but wasn't sure how to start. So he finally said, "Since we're apparently stuck working late together now, maybe we should make it less worky next time." I laughed, and it felt good to hear my own happiness out loud. "You mean, like, coffee? Drinks? Something that doesn't involve dusty old documents and fluorescent lights?" Exactly, he said, eyes lighting up. Maybe a real conversation this time, without the archive walls around us. I agreed, and as we walked out into the building lobby, the night air hit me like a reset button. The city was alive and loud out there, a total contrast to the quiet stillness inside the archive. Before we parted ways, Luke hesitated for a second and then said, "I'm glad I locked that door. It was stupid and impulsive, but I don't regret it." "Neither do I admitted. And for once, it felt like I was saying something true, something honest. We said goodnight, and I walked away feeling like something had shifted inside me. It wasn't just the thrill of a stolen moment or the promise of a new connection. It felt like the start of a chapter I hadn't dared write yet. The next day at work, everything was the same on the surface. The familiar hum of computers, the scent of old paper, the quiet footsteps in the hallways. But now, whenever Luke looked my way, there was that spark, that unspoken understanding that we were both thinking about last night. I caught him watching me once, and I swear he smiled just a little before looking away. Days passed, and our casual conversations started to grow longer and more personal. We'd share coffee breaks in the tiny staff kitchen, talking about everything from favorite movies to childhood memories. Somehow, the archive felt less like a dusty vault, and more like a place where something could actually grow. One evening, a week after the locked door incident, Luke slid a small note across the table at me while we were working. "Dinner?" it said, in neat handwriting. I looked up, caught his eyes, and saw that same nervous excitement I felt every time I thought about him. I slid the note back, writing, "Absolutely. That night we met at a little Italian place not far from the archive. The lighting was soft, the music low, and for the first time since I could remember, I wasn't thinking about deadlines or work projects. I was just with Luke, laughing at his jokes, watching the way his eyes crinkled when he smiled, feeling this warm, easy connection that surprised me. Halfway through dinner, he reached across the table and took my hand. It was tentative, like he was checking to see if I wanted the same thing he did. I squeezed his fingers. "Yeah," I said simply. "I want this." That was the night things really shifted, not with fireworks or grand gestures, but with quiet moments, holding hands under the table, sharing stories we hadn't told anyone else, and the kind of look that said, without words, we were both ready for whatever came next. Back at work the following week, the archive felt different, not because the files had changed or the routine was new, but because Luke and I were different inside it. We still worked late sometimes, but now the locked door wasn't a secret or something to make my heart race in surprise. It was just the backdrop to a story we were writing together, one that felt real and honest and terrifyingly wonderful. And yeah, sometimes we joke about me being locked in again, but now I didn't mind. Because whatever was behind that door with Luke was exactly where I wanted to be. The thing about falling for someone in a place as quiet and dusty as the archive is that it sneaks up on you. One day, you're just filing papers and making small talk, and the next, you find yourself memorizing the way their smile crinkles the corners of their eyes or how their voice softens when they say your name. That's where I was with Luke, and honestly, it caught me off guard. A few days after our dinner, we settled into this comfortable rhythm. Late shifts working side by side, sneaking glances at each other when we thought the other wasn't looking, and those little touches that lingered just a bit longer than necessary. The archive itself felt like a second home now, but with Luke there, it was something more. It was a place where possibility lived. One Thursday night, we were the only two left again. The usual clatter of the archive had faded hours ago, replaced by the hum of the air conditioning and the soft rustle of documents. I was sitting at my usual table, digitizing some old letters, when Luke slid into the chair opposite me, holding 2 cups of coffee. "Thought you might need a refill," he said, setting one down with a grin. "Legend," I replied, smiling back. We fell into that easy silence that had become our default. I looked up at him and caught the way the light caught the faint stubble on his jaw, how his eyes seemed to glow just a little brighter in the dim light. It was like the universe had conspired to make these quiet moments feel electric. "So," Luke began, stirring his coffee slowly, "what's the weirdest thing you've found in here so far?" I laughed, thinking back to some of the strange documents I'd come across. A love letter from the 1920s full of flowery declarations, a ledger with scribbles that looked like code, a box of old photographs that made me wonder about the people behind them. Honestly, Probably a diary from some guy who documented his crush on a guy he never told. It was heartbreaking and sweet and made me realize people's stories are everywhere, even in the quietest places like this. Luke nodded, eyes serious. That's why I like working here. It's like the past is whispering all these secret stories, and we get to be the ones who listen. I felt something shift in me, this deep connection not just to Luke but to the idea of stories, ours included. Before I could say anything, his phone buzzed. He glanced at it, then looked back with a sheepish grin. It's my roommate, wants me to come home. That's cool. I'll probably be here another hour. Luke stood up, stretching. Hey, thanks for sticking around tonight. For real. Wouldn't be anywhere else, I said. As he headed for the door, I felt a sudden urge to ask something I'd been sitting on for days. Hey, Luke. He paused, looking back. Yeah? Would you want to come over sometime? Like after work? We could watch something, or just hang out. His smile was immediate, warm, and maybe a little nervous. I'd like that. We said our goodnights, and I was left alone in the archive with a heart beating way too fast. That weekend, I found myself thinking about Luke in a way that made the whole world seem brighter. When Monday rolled around, I was already counting down the hours until we'd see each other again. Thursday came faster than I expected. After my shift, I headed to Luke's apartment, a cozy little place not too far from the archive. When I arrived, he opened the door with that same easy smile that had been haunting my dreams. His place was a mess. Movies piled on the couch, empty coffee cups on the table. But it felt real, lived in, and somehow inviting. We spent the evening talking and laughing, sharing stories about our families, our weird habits, the things we were scared to admit. Somewhere between a terrible attempt at cooking and an argument over which movie to watch, the distance between us dissolved. At one point, Luke reached out and took my hand, fingers entwining naturally. It wasn't rushed or flashy, just a quiet promise that we were there together. I looked into his eyes, searching for any sign of hesitation, but all I saw was something honest and open. I'm glad you locked that door, I whispered. He grinned, brushing a stray lock of hair behind my ear. Me too. From that night on, things between us deepened in ways I hadn't expected. We still worked late at the archive, but now the locked door was less about secrecy and more about sanctuary. It was our little world, a place where we could be ourselves without the noise of the outside. One evening, as we were packing up, Luke paused and looked at me seriously. I don't want this to be just a late night thing. I want to see where this can go. My heart skipped. Me too. And just like that, the archive wasn't just a place of dusty records and forgotten stories anymore. It was the place where ours began. After that night, everything started to feel more real between us, like the kind of thing that didn't just live in stolen moments or half-lit hallways. Luke wasn't just the charming intern anymore. He was someone I wanted to know, really know, and I think he felt the same way, because the way he looked at me got softer, more serious. We settled into this strange little routine: work during the day, late shifts cataloging and digitizing papers in the archive, and then hanging out afterward, sometimes at his place, sometimes wandering the city. It felt like the archive was our secret base, like every late night behind those locked doors was a chapter in our story. One evening, about 2 weeks after Luke's quiet confession that he wanted to see where this could go, we were working late again. The usual hum of the building, the soft clicking of keyboards, and the occasional shuffle of papers. Nothing unusual. But tonight, there was this tension in the air, this buzz between us that made it impossible to focus. I caught Luke watching me from across the table more than once, and each time his eyes held that electric mix of nervousness and something deeper. Finally, he closed his laptop and stretched, then said, "Hey, can I ask you something?" I looked up, heart suddenly racing. "Sure." He hesitated. "Do you ever worry about what happens next, after this, whatever this is between us?" I blinked. It wasn't a question I'd thought about enough. Honestly? Yeah, I do. The archive feels safe, quiet. But outside of here, it's a different world. Luke nodded. Exactly. I like what we have. But sometimes I wonder if it's enough. If we're ready to tell people, to really be out there. I swallowed hard, thinking about my own fears. The judgment, the awkward conversations, the way being out changed everything. But then I looked at him, sitting there with that hopeful, vulnerable look, and I knew I wanted to be brave. "We'll figure it out," I said, reaching across the table to take his hand. "Together." He smiled, and it was like a weight lifted. "Promise me something?" "Anything. No matter what happens, we don't stop being honest with each other. No matter how scary." I squeezed his hand. "Promise." Later that night, after the archive was locked up and the building was silent, we walked outside together. The city was alive with lights and sounds, but it felt different now. Less intimidating, somehow, because I had Luke by my side. We didn't talk much as we walked, just the comfortable silence of two people who understood each other. When we reached a quiet park bench, Luke stopped and looked at me. "Can I kiss you?" he asked softly. My heart caught in my throat. Yeah. The kiss was slow, tentative at first, but it grew warmer and more certain. It wasn't fireworks or grand drama. It was honest and real, like everything else between us. When we finally pulled apart, Luke rested his forehead against mine and whispered, "I'm glad we locked that door." I laughed, the sound shaky but full of joy. Me too. From that night, things started to shift outside the archive. We told a few close friends, tested the waters with family, and faced awkward questions and unexpected support. It wasn't always easy, but it was ours, and that made all the difference. One afternoon, a couple of months later, Luke and I were back in the archive, finishing up a project. I looked around at the rows of old documents and thought about how much had changed since that first locked door moment. Luke caught my gaze and smiled. "You know, this place will always be special to me." "Yeah," I said, feeling a warmth spread through me. "It's where we started." He reached out and took my hand again, like a silent promise that whatever came next, we'd face it together. And honestly, I couldn't wait to see where that would be. It's funny how the archive, this place full of old, forgotten stories, became the backdrop for the most important one, ours. But even as Luke and I grew closer, the real world outside those dusty walls kept reminding us that not everything was simple. One Thursday evening, a couple of months into us officially being us, we were working late again. Surprise, surprise, when the usual calm inside the archive shifted. I was organizing some files when I heard the distant sound of someone approaching. Not the security guard, not another employee. This was different. Luke peeked over his laptop, his brow furrowing. "You hear that?" I shook my head, trying to brush off the growing unease. Probably just the night janitor or something. But the footsteps got louder, and then a voice cut through the silence. "Hey, sorry to bother you. I'm looking for Mark." My heart skipped. Mark is my boss, the guy who hired both of us, and he tended to be a stickler about closing times. But no way he'd be wandering the archive at this hour. Luke and I exchanged a quick glance. "He's not here right now," I called out. "Can I help you?" The voice hesitated before saying, "I'm Alex. Mark asked me to check in. Said something about the records project needing immediate attention." Luke's laptop screen flickered as he closed a folder, standing up. "I'm Luke. This is the archive. We're almost done for the night. What exactly needs attention?" Alex appeared at the end of the hallway, a lanky guy with sharp eyes and a professional air. Mark wanted to make sure the digitization project was on schedule. He's been concerned about the pace. I felt a knot tighten in my chest. Mark had made it clear he expected a certain speed, but he'd never shown up unannounced before. Luke's gaze locked with mine, and I could read the same tension there. "Right," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "We've been keeping up. It's just the last batch is tricky." Alex nodded. "I get it. Well, I'm here to make sure nothing falls behind." As he walked past, I caught Luke's arm. "What's this about? Why now?" Luke shook his head. "Beats me, but I don't like it." That night, after Alex left, we stayed late working harder than usual, the atmosphere heavier. I could tell Luke was restless, glancing toward the entrance every few minutes, as if expecting someone else to burst in. Finally, as we were packing up, Luke stopped me. "We need to be prepared. Mark's not happy, and I think he's watching more closely now." I nodded, feeling the weight of unspoken worries. You think this could affect us? Our thing? Luke looked at me, eyes serious. Maybe. Being close at work is already tricky. If Mark's pressure increases, things could get complicated. I swallowed hard. The idea that our relationship might cause problems wasn't new, but hearing it out loud made it real. Then what do we do? I asked. We keep being honest, Luke said quietly. And maybe we start thinking about what we want outside these walls. It hit me how right he was. The archive was our safe place, but also a cage in some ways. We needed a plan, a future that didn't rely on late nights and locked doors. Over the next few weeks, things got tense at work. Mark's emails became more frequent, deadlines tighter, and the atmosphere less forgiving. Luke and I found ourselves walking a fine line, supporting each other, but also trying not to draw attention. One evening, after a particularly long day, we found ourselves sitting on the steps outside the building, the city lights flickering around us. I hate feeling like we're hiding, I admitted, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Luke nodded. Me too, but maybe it's not hiding if it's just us being careful. We're not doing anything wrong. I leaned back, staring up at the night sky, feeling both hopeful and scared. I want more, Luke, more than stolen moments and whispered conversations. He reached over and took my hand, fingers weaving together like a lifeline. Me too, and we will. Just takes time. In that quiet moment, I realized that whatever challenges came, we were in it together. The archive had brought us together, but it wouldn't define us forever. We stood up, ready to face whatever came next. And as we walked back inside, hand in hand, I knew that no matter what, Luke and I would write our own story, one that wasn't just hidden in dusty files, but lived out loud. Months passed since that tense stretch with Mark's increasing demands, and slowly things began to settle. The pressure at work never fully disappeared, but Luke and I found a rhythm that balanced ambition with care, for ourselves and for each other. We learned how to navigate the tricky dance of being partners and colleagues without losing sight of what mattered most. One Friday evening, after a long week of meetings and deadlines, Luke and I stayed late in the archive, as usual. But this time, there was no nervousness beneath the surface, just a comfortable ease. The stacks of old documents and humming computers felt less like walls and more like familiar friends. I looked over at him, his face softly lit by the glow of his laptop, and felt a quiet gratitude for all we'd found in this place. Remember when you locked that door on me? I asked, grinning. Luke laughed, a warm, genuine sound that always made my chest feel light. How could I forget? That was the start of everything. I nodded, feeling the weight of those words. Yeah, I was scared at first, but now I can't imagine a better place for us to have started. He reached across the table and took my hand, fingers curling around mine gently. Me neither. We stayed like that for a while, just holding hands in the quiet archive, the world outside fading away. It wasn't dramatic or flashy. It was simply us, sharing a moment that felt like home. Later, as we finally packed up to leave, Luke stopped me by the door. I was thinking, maybe we don't have to wait for the perfect time or place. Maybe we make our own. What do you mean? I asked, curious. He smiled, that same shy, hopeful smile that had drawn me in from the start. I mean us. Together. Out loud. Not just here. In the archive. I want people to know who we are, without fear or hesitation. My heart swelled. It wasn't about grand declarations or sweeping gestures. It was about honesty and courage, the kind that grows steady and strong over time. I want that too, I said softly. And just like that, something shifted again. But this time, it felt like a beginning instead of a question. Walking out into the city night hand in hand, I realized that the archive might have been where our story started, but it wasn't where it would end. Luke and I had found more than love in those locked doors. We found trust, hope, and a future waiting to be written, and I couldn't wait to write it with him.